My name is Natalie Harper, and I'm 27 years old. I never imagined a simple family dinner would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. I was sitting at my parents' dining table in their Connecticut home, passing the mashed potatoes, when my father looked directly at me and asked the question that made my blood run cold. Natalie, we need to talk about the $250,000. What exactly did you do with it? I froze mid-reach, my hand suspended in the air. 250,000? What are you talking about? My brother Derek, sitting across from me, went completely pale. His fork clattered against his plate. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you're ready for a story about family betrayal, stolen money, and the fight for truth, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these real-life stories. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. Now, let's get back to that dinner table where my entire world was about to shatter. My mother Patricia set down her water glass with a soft clink that somehow sounded deafening in the sudden silence. Natalie, don't play games. The trust fund from your grandmother. We released it to you 3 months ago. I stared at her, my mind racing through the past 3 months. Nothing. No mysterious deposits, no sudden windfall, nothing remotely close to $250,000 had touched my bank account. Mom, I have no idea what you're talking about. I never received any money. My father Richard pulled out a manila folder from beside his chair, something he must have prepared before I even arrived. He slid it across the table, and I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were bank statements, transfer authorizations, and official documents all bearing my name and what appeared to be my digital signature. The trust fund had been set up when I turned 18, a gift from my maternal grandmother who passed away when I was in college. The money was held in a special account, managed by my parents, waiting until I was deemed financially mature enough to handle it responsibly. According to these documents, that day had come 3 months ago. The release form was dated precisely 92 days before this dinner. My signature looked perfect, the email address was mine, and yet I had absolutely no memory of any of this. This isn't possible, I whispered, scrolling through my phone to check my bank accounts right there at the table. My checking account showed $847. My savings had $2,300. My investment account, which had been slowly building, had just over $6,000, nothing even close to $250,000. Derek suddenly pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. I don't feel well. Excuse me. He rushed toward the bathroom, leaving his wife Brenda sitting there with a concerned expression that seemed just a little too rehearsed. Has been so stressed with work lately, Brenda offered, her hand fluttering to her pearl necklace. This conversation is probably overwhelming for him. He cares so much about family. I barely heard her. I was staring at the signature authorization document, recognizing the email address but knowing with absolute certainty that I had never, ever clicked on any authorization to release these funds. My grandmother had been a school teacher her entire life, had saved carefully, invested wisely, and had left this money specifically for me with the instruction that it should help me build a stable future. I worked as a social worker at a nonprofit downtown, making $38,000 a year. I lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was more up-and-coming than actually nice. My car was a 2008 Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door and a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. I had $43,000 in student loans that I chipped away at month by month. The idea that I had received $250,000 and somehow forgot about it or spent it without noticing was absolutely insane. Dad, I swear to you, I never got this money. Something is wrong here. Richard looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between disappointment and disbelief. Natalie, the paperwork is all here, your signature, your email, your bank account information. The money was transferred exactly where you authorized it to go. My phone buzzed in my hand, a text from an unknown number. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. I felt ice water pour down my spine. I held up the phone, showing my parents the message. Look at this, someone is threatening me. Patricia frowned, leaning in to read the message. Threatening? Sweetheart, that could be from anyone. It could be spam. You can't just deflect from this conversation. But it wasn't spam, and we all knew it. Someone in this house knew exactly what had happened to that money, and they were warning me to stay quiet. Derek returned from the bathroom, his face freshly washed, water droplets still visible on his temples. Had taken the time to compose himself, and now he slid back into his seat with a carefully neutral expression. "Everything okay?" he asked, as if he hadn't just fled the table in a panic. "No, Derek, everything is not okay," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "Someone stole $250,000 from me, and I'm going to find out who." Brenda's eyes widened. "Stole? Natalie, that's a very serious accusation. Maybe you should think carefully before you start throwing around words like that." The way she said it, the slight emphasis on carefully, felt like another warning. These people, my brother and his wife, were sitting at this table acting like concerned family members, while I could feel the web of lies tightening around me. My parents looked at each other, that silent communication that comes from 34 years of marriage. I could see them wavering, wanting to believe me but confronted with official documents that told a different story. "Well, figure this out," Richard finally said. But his tone lacked conviction. Maybe there was some kind of banking error. "Well, I'll take some time to cool down and look into this properly." But I didn't want to cool down. I wanted answers. I wanted to know how someone had stolen my grandmother's legacy, forged my signature, and made it look like I had received money that never touched my hands. As I gathered my purse and jacket, preparing to leave this dinner that had turned into a nightmare, I caught Derek watching me. For just a split second, I saw something in his eyes. Not concern, not confusion, fear. And in that moment, I knew. My brother had something to do with this, and he was terrified I was going to figure it out. I made it to my car before the tears came. Sitting in the driveway of my childhood home, I sobbed into my steering wheel, my whole body shaking with the injustice of it all. My phone buzzed again, another text from the same unknown number. "Leave it alone, you can't win this." I stared at those words until they blurred. Someone was very invested in making sure I didn't pursue this, which only confirmed that I absolutely had to. I was about to start the engine when a knock on my window made me jump. Derek stood there, his hands in his pockets, looking concerned in that way that now seemed completely fake. I rolled down the window halfway, not trusting myself to actually have a conversation with him. "Nat, I'm really worried about you," he started, using the childhood nickname that suddenly felt like manipulation. "I think you need to really search your memory. Are you sure you didn't receive that money and maybe, I don't know, spend it without realizing? It happens. People get money and it just sort of disappears." I stared at him in disbelief. "Derek, I'm a social worker. I make $38,000 a year. If $250,000 showed up in my account, I would notice. I would absolutely notice." He nodded slowly, like a therapist acknowledging a patient's delusion. I know. But sometimes people go through things, stress, maybe some mental health stuff, and they don't remember everything clearly. Remember that vacation you took last year? You mean the weekend camping trip that cost me $80 total? I shot back. What about it? Derek shrugged, his expression maddeningly sympathetic. I'm just saying you've been spending money. New clothes, going out with friends, that nice dinner you posted on social media, maybe it all added up more than you thought. Every word out of his mouth was a carefully constructed lie. I hadn't bought new clothes in 8 months except for a $15 shirt from Target. My social media post was from a birthday dinner where friends had treated me. He was creating a narrative out of thin air, and I could see exactly what he was doing. He was building a story where I was irresponsible, forgetful, possibly unstable, someone who could lose track of a fortune. I know what you're doing, I said quietly. I know this is you, Derek. Something flickered across his face, too quick to fully identify. But it was there. Panic, maybe. Or calculation. Natalie, that's crazy. Why would I steal from my own sister? I'm trying to help you here. We're family. Brenda appeared on the porch, calling out to him. Derek, honey, we should get going. Early morning tomorrow. He straightened up, backing away from my car. Think about what I said, okay? Really search your memory. Maybe talk to a therapist. There's no shame in getting help, and there it was, the suggestion that I needed psychiatric help. The seed planted that would grow in my parents' minds, making them question everything I said. I watched him walk back to the house, his arm sliding around Brenda's waist, and I saw them exchange a look. They were in this together. I drove home on autopilot, my mind spinning through everything that had just happened. Inside my apartment, I poured a glass of wine I couldn't afford, and opened my laptop. I needed to document everything while it was fresh. Every word, every expression, every tiny detail that might matter later. As I typed, my phone rang. My mother. "Hi, Mom." Patricia's voice was thick with emotion. "Honey, your father and I have been talking. We're very concerned about you. Derek mentioned that you accused him of stealing the money. That's very serious, and very unlike you." Of course, Derek had called them immediately, shaping the narrative before I even got home. "Mom, I didn't directly accuse him. I just said something felt wrong about all this. Natalie, Derek loves you, has been so worried. He mentioned that you've been having some shopping habits, spending more than usual, and he said you seemed confused about your vacation last year." I closed my eyes, feeling the web tightening. "That's not true. None of that is true." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "We just think maybe you should talk to someone, a professional. There's no shame in it, sweetheart. Sometimes we go through stressful periods and we don't remember things clearly. Maybe you received the money and spent it during some kind of episode." The word episode hit me like a slap. My own mother, the woman who raised me, was suggesting Id had some kind of mental breakdown and blown through $250,000 without remembering. "I need to go, Mom." I hung up before she could respond, before I said something I couldn't take back. I sat there in my quiet apartment, surrounded by my modest furniture and my life that clearly showed no evidence of a sudden windfall, and I realized how brilliant Derek's strategy was. He wasn't just stealing money, he was stealing my credibility. If everyone believed I was unstable or irresponsible, then nothing I said would matter, no one would believe me. Head created the perfect crime because Head made me the perpetrator. Number Part 4. Investigation begins discovering Derek's secrets. The next morning, I called my bank before I even got out of bed. After being transferred 4 times and waiting on hold for 37 minutes, I finally reached someone in the fraud department. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. The representative, a woman named Teresa with a kind voice, listened carefully. "I'm showing here that an account was opened in your name 4 months ago at one of our branch locations in Fairfield. The trust fund transfer went into that account." Fairfield. That was 40 minutes from where I lived, but only 15 minutes from Derek's house. I never opened an account in Fairfield. I've never even been to that branch. Teresa made sympathetic noises. "Unfortunately, the account was opened with all the proper documentation. Driver's license, social security number, email verification. Everything appeared legitimate." I felt my hands start to shake. So someone stole my identity, opened an account in my name, and transferred my money into it. That's fraud. That's a crime. Teresa agreed that I should file a police report and submit a fraud claim with the bank. She explained the process would take time, possibly months. Banks moved slowly on these things, especially when the documentation looked legitimate. Every day that passed was another day Derek had to hide the money, to cover his tracks, to further destroy my credibility. After the call, I sat at my kitchen table and thought about who I could trust. Most of my close friends had moved away after college. My family was either actively working against me or being manipulated by Derek. Then I remembered Marcus. We'd been friends in college, both of us in the computer science club, even though I eventually switched to social work. Marcus had gone on to work in cybersecurity for a firm in Boston. If anyone could help me trace digital fraud, it was him. I found his number and called, half expecting it to go to voicemail. He answered on the second ring. "Natalie Harper. This is unexpected." His voice was warm, friendly, and hearing it made me realize how isolated it'd become. "Marcus, I need your help. Someone stole a lot of money from me, and I think they cloned my digital identity to do it." I heard his chair creak as he sat up. "Tell me everything." I spent 40 minutes explaining the whole situation. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Send me access to your email accounts, your social media, any cloud storage you use. I'll need to see the bank documents too." If someone cloned your identity, they left digital fingerprints somewhere. For the first time since that terrible dinner, I felt a spark of hope. Marcus worked fast. By that afternoon, he called me back. Natalie, someone accessed your email account 2 years ago from an IP address that wasn't yours. They copied everything, all your contacts, your saved information, even some old password reset emails that could have given them access to other accounts. Can you trace the IP address? I asked, my heart pounding. There was a pause. It's registered to a home address in Westport. I'm sending you the information now. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. I opened it and stared at the address. It was Derek's house. My brother had hacked into my email 2 years ago, had been slowly collecting information about me, waiting for the right moment to strike. The trust fund must have been the opportunity he was waiting for. I sat down hard on my couch, the full scope of his planning hitting me. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a moment of weakness. Derek had been preparing to steal from me for years. I needed to see with my own eyes what he was doing with the money. That evening, I drove to Derek's neighborhood, parking down the street where I could see his house. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the well-manicured lawns. And there, in Derek's driveway, sat a brand-new BMW. Navy blue, gleaming in the fading light, with temporary dealer plates. That car cost at least $70,000. I took pictures with my phone, documenting the date and time. As I watched, Derek came out of the house, walking around the car with a satisfied expression. Brenda joined him, and they stood there admiring it like proud parents. This was my grandmother's money. This was her legacy that was supposed to help me build a life, and he was using it to buy luxury cars. I remembered something then. About 6 months ago, Derek had mentioned at a family gathering that his marketing company was struggling. Head made some bad investments, lost some major clients. Head looked genuinely worried, had even asked my father for advice. At the time, I'd felt sorry for him. Now I understood. He'd been setting up his excuse, his reason for needing money. And when the trust fund release came available, He'd seen his solution. I drove home and started researching his company online. The business had filed for bankruptcy protection 7 months ago. Court documents showed he owed $230,000 to various creditors. The timeline was damning. Company falls apart, Derek faces financial ruin, and suddenly my trust fund gets released and transferred to an account in my name that I never opened. I tried calling my parents to explain what I'd found, but the calls went straight to voicemail. My mother called back an hour later, her message brief and cold. "Natalie, your father and I need some space from you right now. We love you, but we can't be involved in these accusations. Please get help." Space? They wanted space from their daughter who was trying to report a crime. But Derek, the thief, got their support. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking Brenda's social media, and there it was, a new post from that evening. A carefully worded message about how family betrayal hurts the most, how money changes people, how important it is to stay true to your values. She didn't mention names, but the target was obvious. The comments rolled in from relatives and family friends. "So sorry you're going through this, stay strong." Some people show their true colors when money is involved. They were talking about me. I was the villain in this story that Derek and Brenda were telling. My phone rang. Aunt Margaret, my mother's older sister. "Natalie, I just heard some very disturbing things about you. I don't even know what to say." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it all crushing down. "Aunt Margaret, please let me explain what actually happened," but Shed already made up her mind. Everyone had. Derek's preemptive strike was working perfectly. He'd turned the entire family against me before I even had a chance to present evidence. I was alone in this fight, and he knew it. I gave myself one night to wallow. One night to cry and rage and feel sorry for myself. By morning, I was done with tears. Marcus had sent me a detailed report showing the digital trail of how my identity had been stolen. I had the bank's preliminary fraud report. I had photos of Derek's new car and screenshots of the bankruptcy filings. It was time to confront him directly. Derek's marketing company was in a small office building in downtown Westport. I arrived at 10 in the morning, carrying a folder with all my printed evidence. The receptionist looked surprised when I asked for Derek, but she buzzed him. He came out to the lobby with a confused smile that disappeared the moment he saw my face. "Natalie, what are you doing here?" I held up the folder. "We need to talk, now." He glanced at the receptionist, clearly uncomfortable having this conversation in front of an employee. "I'm actually really busy today. Maybe we can grab coffee this weekend." I moved closer, my voice low but firm. "We can talk here in the lobby, or we can talk in your office. But we are going to talk right now." Something hardened in his expression. He led me down a short hallway to a small office that looked like it had been hastily organized to appear more successful than it was. The moment the door closed, I started laying out documents on his desk. "You accessed my email 2 years ago from your home computer. You installed a keylogger on the family computer during Christmas to steal my passwords. You opened a bank account in my name in Fairfield. You forged my signature to release the trust fund and transferred it to yourself." Derek didn't even look at the papers. He leaned back in his chair with an expression of calculated sympathy. "Natalie, you need help. This paranoid fantasy you've created, it's not healthy." I had expected denial, but the patronizing tone caught me off guard. "I have evidence, digital forensics showing your IP address accessing my accounts. I have the bank's fraud report. I have your bankruptcy filings showing you needed exactly the amount of money that disappeared. You bought a new BMW the same month the money was transferred." He stood up abruptly, pulling out his phone. "I think you should leave now. You're clearly not well." He was texting someone, his thumbs moving rapidly. "If you don't stop harassing me, I'm going to have to get a restraining order. I don't want to do that to my own sister, but you're leaving me no choice." The door opened, and Brenda walked in, her phone already raised and recording. "Natalie, what are you doing here?" "Derek, is she threatening you?" I realized too late that I'd walked into a trap. They'd planned this. Derek had texted her the moment I arrived, and now she was recording me confronting him, ready to twist everything I said. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm trying to get my money back." Derek held up his hands in a placating gesture that was clearly for the camera. "Natalie, I know you're confused. I know you're struggling. But I didn't take any money from you. I'm really worried about your mental health right now. You're making accusations that don't make any sense." Brenda zoomed in on my face, catching my anger and frustration. "You seem very agitated, Natalie. Have you been taking any medication? Have you talked to a doctor?" They were building their narrative. The unstable sister having a breakdown, making wild accusations. Every word I said would be used against me. "Turn off that camera, Brenda." She shook her head sadly. "I'm documenting this for Derek's safety. You're acting very erratically." Derek moved toward his office phone. "I'm calling security." "Natalie, I love you, but I can't have you coming to my workplace and causing scenes." 2 security guards arrived within minutes. They were polite but firm. Would I please leave the premises? There had been a complaint. I gathered my evidence with shaking hands, watching Derek's performance as the concerned brother dealing with his troubled sister. As the guards escorted me out, I heard Brenda's voice behind me. "I hope you get the help you need, Natalie. We're praying for you." The video of my unstable confrontation was sent to family members within the hour. My phone started blowing up with messages. Cousin Beth asking if I was okay, if I needed help. Uncle Ron suggesting I check myself into a facility for a few days. Aunt Joyce saying she was shocked and disappointed in my behavior. That evening, my mother called, not to ask my side of the story, but to arrange an intervention. "We're all very worried about you, sweetheart. We think you're having some kind of crisis. We want to help." The intervention was scheduled for the next evening at my parents' house. Patricia made it sound like a caring gesture, but I knew what it was. Another opportunity for Derek to control the narrative, to paint me as the problem. I almost didn't go. I sat in my car outside my parents' house for 20 minutes, debating whether to drive away and never look back. But running would make me look guilty. Running would confirm everything Derek was saying about me. I had to face this. Inside, I found a scene carefully orchestrated to look like concern. My parents, Derek and Brenda, and Pastor William from the church my parents attended. They all sat in a semicircle facing one empty chair that was clearly meant for me. "Thank you for coming, Natalie," Richard said, gesturing to the chair. "We're all here because we love you, and we're worried." Pastor William spoke in that gentle, infuriating tone people use when they think you're fragile. Natalie, your family has shared some concerns with me. They think you might be going through a difficult time, maybe struggling with some confusion about recent events. Derek leaned forward, his face the picture of brotherly concern. Nat, we just want to help you. If you took the money during some kind of mental health crisis, there's no judgment. We just want you to be honest so we can help you get better. I looked around the circle. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father looked stern and uncomfortable. Brenda had her hand on Derek's knee in a show of supportive solidarity. And Derek himself looked like a saint trying to save his fallen sister. So this is the story you're telling, I said quietly. I had a mental breakdown, spent or hid $250,000, and now am making up conspiracies to cover for it. Patricia reached for my hand. Honey, if you're in trouble, if you got involved in something bad, drugs maybe, or gambling, you can tell us. We'll help you, but you have to be honest. Drugs, gambling. They were piling on explanations for where the money could have gone, each one painting me as more and more irresponsible or unstable. Derek's voice was soft, reasonable. I want to help you through this. If you can just admit what happened, it'll even help pay for treatment. I know my business isn't doing great, but family comes first. The manipulation was masterful. He was offering to help me, making himself look generous, while simultaneously reminding everyone that his business was struggling, so he couldn't possibly have stolen money he desperately needed. I stood up. I'm not going to sit here and confess to something I didn't do. Derek stole from me. He hacked my email, forged my signature, and stole my grandmother's legacy. I have evidence, but none of you want to see it, because it's easier to believe I'm the problem. Pastor William stood too, his hand extended in peace. Natalie, denial is the first stage. Let us help you move toward acceptance and healing. I walked out, leaving them all sitting there in their circle of concern and lies. As I reached my car, I heard the front door open. Derek called out to me. Natalie, wait. I turned. He stood on the porch alone, and for just a moment, his mask slipped. The concern disappeared, replaced by something cold. You should really stop this. You're only hurting yourself. It was a warning, clear and unmistakable, and it told me I was getting close to something he was desperate to keep hidden. The next morning, I received a notice from my landlord. Someone had called claiming to be my mother, saying I was having mental health issues and might be a danger to myself or others. My boss Linda called me in for a meeting. Shed received a similar call, someone expressing concern about my stability and whether I should be working with vulnerable populations. Derek wasn't just stealing my money, he was systematically destroying my reputation, my housing security, my career. He was making sure that even if I proved the fraud, I'd have nothing left to return to. I called in sick to work for 3 days. I couldn't face the pitying looks, the careful questions, the way people were treating me like I might shatter at any moment. Linda had been kind during our meeting, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. If my own family thought I was unstable, why shouldn't my boss believe it too? I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen, reading and rereading the evidence I'd collected. It was all there, the digital trail, the timeline, the financial records. But evidence didn't matter when no one believed you. Evidence was just paper when you'd been labeled crazy. My bank account was down to $412. Rent was due in a week. Student loan payment was already late. I'd spent most of my savings on copies, on filing police reports, on trying to build a case that no one wanted to hear. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was going broke trying to recover the money that was already mine. I drafted an email to my parents. An apology. Not for anything I'd actually done, but just to make the pain stop. Mom and Dad. I'm sorry for the confusion and the accusations. Maybe I did receive the money and forgot. Maybe I'm not remembering things clearly. I just want our family back. My finger hovered over the send button. One click and this nightmare could be over. I could admit to crimes I didn't commit, let Derek win, and maybe salvage some relationship with my parents before they died, thinking their daughter was a thief and a liar. Before I could press send, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Natalie? It's Rachel, your cousin. Rachel was my father's niece, 3 years older than me. We'd been close as kids but had drifted apart as adults. She lived in Rhode Island and I hadn't talked to her in over a year. "Rachel, hi, how are you?" Her voice was careful, feeling out the situation. "I heard about what's happening. The family has been talking. I wanted to hear your side of things." I almost hung up. Another family member calling to tell me I needed help, to suggest treatment, to side with Derek's perfectly constructed lies. But something in her tone stopped me. "Why do you want my side? Everyone else has already decided I'm the problem." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Because something feels off about Derek's story. I've been thinking about it for days, and it doesn't add up. So I wanted to call you directly." Those words broke something in me. I started crying, really crying, for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Someone was willing to listen. Someone was questioning the narrative. I told Rachel everything. I didn't leave anything out, didn't try to make myself sound rational or calm. I just poured out the whole story, the evidence, the manipulation, the systematic destruction of my credibility. When I finished, Rachel was silent. For so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she spoke. "Natalie, Derek borrowed $15,000 from me last year. He said it was for his business, promised to pay me back in 6 months. I never saw a penny. My heart started pounding. Did you tell anyone?" Rachel laughed bitterly. "I told my parents. They said Derek was going through a hard time and I should be patient. They said family helps family. So I dropped it. But after I heard about your situation, I started asking around quietly. Derek tried to borrow from Aunt Joyce too. She turned him down. And Uncle Ron mentioned Derek had asked him for a loan right before Thanksgiving. This was the pattern I needed. Derek wasn't just stealing from me. He'd been going to everyone in the family, systematically trying to extract money. My trust fund was just the biggest score. Rachel, would you be willing to tell my parents this?" She hesitated. "My mom would kill me for going against Derek. The family has really rallied around him. But yes. I'll tell them. This isn't right, Natalie. What he's doing to you isn't right." After we hung up, I deleted the apology email. Rachel's call had reminded me what was at stake. This wasn't just about money, it was about truth. It was about not letting Derek rewrite reality to cover his crimes. It was about my grandmother, who had worked her entire life and saved carefully, so I would have opportunities she never had. I owed it to her memory to fight. I used the last of my savings to hire an attorney. I found Sarah Chen through online reviews. She specialized in financial fraud and identity theft. Her consultation fee was $200, money I couldn't really afford, but I was out of options. Sarah's office was small but professional, filled with law books and case files. She listened to my story with sharp attention, taking notes, asking pointed questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "You have a good case. The digital forensics showing the IP address alone is powerful evidence. Combined with the timeline of his financial troubles and the suspicious bank account opening, this is prosecutable." I felt hope flicker. "So, you'll take my case?" Sarah set down her pen. "I'll take it, but I need to be honest with you. Cases like this, even with good evidence, can take months or years to resolve. Your brother has done a good job of muddying the waters. We'll need bank records showing exactly where the money went after the initial transfer. We'll need to prove beyond doubt that you didn't authorize the account opening, and we'll need to overcome the narrative he's built about your credibility." I nodded. "Whatever it takes. I can't let him get away with this." Sarah quoted me her rates. "It was more than I made in 3 months. She must have seen my face fall because she offered a payment plan. Well, make it work. But Natalie, you need to be prepared for this to get uglier before it gets better. Your brother isn't going to just roll over. He's going to fight back, and based on what you've told me, he's willing to destroy you to protect himself." I signed the retainer agreement with shaking hands. It was terrifying, committing to a legal battle I couldn't afford against a family member who had everyone's support, but it was also empowering. I wasn't alone anymore. I had Rachel, I had Marcus with his technical expertise, and now I had Sarah with her legal knowledge. Derek had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated how hard it'd fight for the truth. Sarah moved quickly. She filed a formal request for bank records through legal channels, subpoenaing documents that the bank had been slow to provide when I'd asked as an individual. She also filed a civil suit against Derek, which meant Head have to respond officially rather than just manipulating the family narrative. The lawsuit stated clearly that Derek Harper had committed fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. Seeing it there in black and white, legal language making my accusations formal, felt like the first real step toward justice. Derek's response came through his own attorney 3 days later. A complete denial. The paperwork claimed I was making false accusations due to mental health issues and financial desperation. It suggested I was attempting to extract money from my brother to cover my own debts. Marcus continued his digital investigation, going deeper into the access logs. He discovered that Derek had installed a keylogger program on the family computer during Christmas 2 years ago. The program had been designed to capture every keystroke, every password, everything anyone typed. My parents used that computer for their banking, their emails, everything. Derek hadn't just stolen from me. Head potentially compromised all of their information too. "This is bigger than we thought," Marcus said over the phone. "He had access to everything. Your parents' accounts, your old emails from when you'd check them at their house, everything. He was collecting information for years." The level of premeditation was staggering. This wasn't opportunistic. Derek had been planning this for so long, waiting for the right moment. Marcus also found the specific moment when Derek had accessed my email to get the password reset codes for my bank accounts. It was from his home computer, at 2 in the morning, 8 months ago. He'd been methodical, careful, but Head left traces because he never expected anyone to look. Rachel, true to her word, agreed to help gather information from the family side. She attended a family barbecue at Aunt Joyce's house and quietly recorded conversations on her phone. In one conversation, Derek was bragging about new investments Head made, talking about his portfolio diversification and real estate opportunities he was exploring. For someone who'd filed for bankruptcy, he was awfully confident about his financial future. Brenda chimed in during the recording, mentioning their upcoming vacation to the Maldives. "We've always wanted to go, and Derek said we finally have the breathing room to splurge a little." Rachel sent me the audio file. The timeline was damning. Derek had filed for bankruptcy 7 months ago. The trust fund was transferred 4 months ago. Now, just 3 months after receiving my money, he was talking about investments and planning luxury vacations. The pattern was impossible to ignore. I spent evenings sitting in my car down the street from Derek's house, documenting everything. I photographed delivery trucks bringing new furniture. I documented a landscaping company working on his yard, installing expensive hardscaping and professional lighting. A pool company came to open up his in-ground pool, something that required significant maintenance cost. His neighbor, an elderly woman named Doris who was out gardening one evening, struck up a conversation with me when I was sitting in my car. "You're watching the Harper house," she said matter-of-factly. "You're the second person this month." That got my attention. Someone else was watching them. Doris nodded, leaning on her rake. "Man in a suit, couple weeks back. Took pictures just like you're doing, looked official. That was probably someone from the bankruptcy court or a creditor. Good to know, I wasn't the only one interested in Derek's sudden wealth." Doris and I chatted for a while. She mentioned that the Harper's house had been facing foreclosure 6 months ago. There were notices on the door, very sad situation. But then suddenly, everything changed. The notices disappeared, they paid up somehow, and now they're doing all these renovations. The timeline kept aligning perfectly. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, financial ruin. Then suddenly, right after my trust fund disappeared, Derek had money for everything. Doris mentioned Derek had told neighbors that a business deal had come through, that Head landed a major client that saved his company. But Id checked his business records. There were no new clients, no sudden revenue, the company was still functionally defunct. The money came from one place only, my grandmother's legacy. Sarah managed to get preliminary bank records through the court order. The money trail showed the trust fund hitting the fraudulent account in my name, then being transferred within 48 hours to 3 different accounts. From there, it bounced through investment accounts, cryptocurrency exchanges, and finally into accounts in Derek's actual name. Head tried to obscure the trail, but Marcus was able to follow the digital breadcrumbs. One crucial piece of evidence emerged from the metadata. Derek had used his home computer for one of the transfers, probably thinking it was untraceable. But the computer's MAC address was captured in the transaction log, and it definitively proved that the transfer wasn't done by me from my laptop. It was done from Derek's home network. We now had the IP address, the MAC address, the timeline, the financial records showing his bankruptcy and sudden recovery, the recordings of him bragging about investments, photographs of his lifestyle improvements, and witness statements from family members about his attempts to borrow money. The case was strong, maybe even prosecutable criminally, not just in civil court. But Derek wasn't done fighting. I received a formal notice that Head filed for a restraining order against me. The filing claimed it'd been stalking him, showing up at his workplace, driving by his house, harassing him and his wife. He included the video Brenda had taken at his office, edited to make me look aggressive and unstable. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. If the restraining order was granted, I couldn't go near him, which would make it nearly impossible to gather more evidence or even attend family functions where he might be present. Sarah assured me we'd fight it, but the fact that He'd taken this step showed he was getting nervous. He was trying to legally shut down my investigation. The same day I got the restraining order notice, my Aunt Joyce called. Not to check on me, but to tell me how disappointed she was in my behavior. Stalking your own brother, Natalie. Making these wild accusations. Your parents are heartbroken. You need to stop this madness before you destroy what's left of this family. I tried to explain, tried to share the evidence, but she wouldn't listen. Derek has been nothing but concerned for you. He even offered to pay for treatment, and this is how you repay him? I'm ashamed. She hung up before I could respond. The family was still solidly on Derek's side, which meant even with evidence, I was fighting an uphill battle for their belief. But I wasn't fighting for their belief anymore. I was fighting for justice, for legal recognition of what had been done to me. Whether my parents ever believed me or not, I would prove in court that Derek was a thief. Sarah came up with the plan over coffee at her office. We need to create a situation where Derek incriminates himself, preferably in front of witnesses, specifically, in front of your parents. I was hesitant. They don't believe anything I say. How will getting them in a room help? Sarah smiled. Because we're not going to have you say anything. We're going to let Derek hang himself with his own words. Rachel agreed to host a reconciliation dinner at her house in Rhode Island. She called my parents and positioned it as a chance to bring the family back together, to heal the rift. She told them I wanted to apologize, that I'd been doing some soul-searching and realized I'd handled things wrong. My parents were hesitant, but Rachel was persuasive. She also invited Derek and Brenda, framing it as a chance for the family to move forward together. Derek was suspicious at first, but Brenda convinced him to go. She posted about it on social media, something about being the bigger person and accepting an olive branch. The dinner was set for Friday evening. Sarah coached me extensively on what to say and not say. Let Derek feel comfortable, let him think he's won. Confident people make mistakes. Marcus set up recording equipment in Rachel's dining room, hidden cameras and microphones that would capture everything. It was all legal since Rachel owned the house and had consented. Friday arrived and I was a nervous wreck. I showed up at Rachel's house an hour early to prepare. Sarah came too, though we'd introduce her as just a friend. Marcus was monitoring the equipment remotely from his apartment in Boston. My parents arrived first, looking older than I remembered. The stress of the family conflict had aged them. Patricia hugged me carefully, like I might break. Thank you for agreeing to do this, honey. We just want peace. Richard nodded, his jaw tight. Had never been comfortable with emotional confrontation. Derek and Brenda arrived exactly on time, their body language radiating the confidence of people who'd already won. Derek hugged me, that same fake brotherly affection, and whispered, "I'm glad you came to your senses." We all sat down to Rachel's carefully prepared meal. For the first 20 minutes, conversation was awkward and stilted. Everyone was being too polite, dancing around the elephant in the room. Then, following Sarah's coaching, I started my performance. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said quietly, looking down at my plate. About everything that's happened, about the money and the accusations I made. I felt Derek relax across the table. Patricia reached over to squeeze my hand. We're so glad you're ready to talk about this, sweetheart. I continued, my voice shaky but controlled. I just want to move forward. I want to understand things better. Derek, you've always been good with money, better than me. Maybe you could give me some advice on how to manage finances better? I clearly need help in that department. It was exactly the opening Derek couldn't resist. The chance to play the wise older brother, to reinforce the narrative of my financial incompetence. He leaned back in his chair, settling into his role. Of course, Nat. I'd be happy to help. Money management is really about discipline and smart investing. You have to know when to take risks and when to play it safe. He launched into a lecture about investment strategies, clearly enjoying the sound of his own voice. I asked innocent questions, letting him expand. So, what kind of investments do you recommend? What have you done that's worked well? Derek smiled, the kind of smile that came from feeling superior. Well, I've diversified quite a bit recently. Real estate, some stock portfolios, a little cryptocurrency. The key is not putting all your eggs in one basket. When I came into some money recently, I made sure to spread it around strategically. Patricia frowned slightly. When you came into money? I thought your business was struggling. Derek waved a hand dismissively. It was, but I made some good moves, got lucky with a few investments. Sometimes you just need a little seed money to turn things around. Brenda shot him a look, a warning that he was saying too much, but Derek was on a roll. Rachel jumped in with perfectly timed innocence. That's wonderful that your business recovered. What was the turning point? What changed? Derek took a long sip of wine, relaxing into the attention. Honestly, it was about timing. I had some business opportunities that needed capital, and I managed to secure the funding right when I needed it. About 3-4 months ago. Before that, I was underwater, drowning in debt. But you make one good move and everything turns around. Sarah, who'd been introduced simply as my friend, asked casual questions that sounded like polite interest but were actually tactical. That must have been such a relief. Going from financial stress to having investment capital, how much of a difference are we talking? Derek laughed, the wine loosening his tongue. Significant. I mean, we're talking about the difference between losing my house and being able to renovate it. Between driving an old Honda and buying a BMW. Between wondering how to pay bills and planning a vacation to the Maldives. My father was starting to look uncomfortable. Derek, that's quite a turnaround for someone who filed for bankruptcy. Derek's confidence faltered for just a moment, but he recovered. Like I said, one good business deal can change everything. I landed a major contract, Rachel asked. Which client was it? That's so exciting, Derek hesitated. It's confidential, NDA, but trust me, it was legitimate. Sarah leaned forward slightly. It's just interesting, the timing. You filed for bankruptcy 7 months ago, and then suddenly 3 months ago you had enough capital to make all these investments and improvements. That's incredibly lucky. Derek was starting to realize something was off. His eyes darted between Sarah and me. I don't know what you're getting at, but my financial recovery is my business. I decided it was time. The timing is interesting, Derek, because 3 months ago was exactly when my trust fund was transferred. The trust fund I never received. The $250,000 that disappeared into an account I never opened. Derek's face went from confident to pale in seconds. He stood up quickly. I'm not doing this again. Natalie, you said you wanted to apologize, to move forward. Sarah stood too, and her demeanor changed from friendly guest to attorney. I'm Sarah Chen, Natalie's lawyer. And we've been recording this conversation. Derek, you just admitted on camera that you came into a significant amount of money 3 months ago, the exact timing of the trust fund transfer. You've described investments and purchases that match exactly with the amount stolen from Natalie. Brenda started crying, real tears of panic this time. Derek, we need to leave. Now. But Marcus chose that moment to walk in from the kitchen where he'd been monitoring the feeds. He carried his laptop, and without asking, he connected it to Rachel's TV. The screen lit up with transaction records, digital trails, bank statements. This is the money trail, Marcus explained, his voice calm and professional. Trust fund transferred to fraudulent account. Moved through 3 intermediary accounts. Final destination, accounts belonging to Derek Harper. The transfers were initiated from IP address registered to Derek's home. The computer MAC address matches his home computer. My parents sat frozen, staring at the evidence on the screen. Patricia's hand was over her mouth. Richard looked like he might be sick. Derek tried one last time. This is fabricated. She's setting me up because she's angry and unstable. Sarah shook her head. The bank records are official documents, obtained through court order. The digital forensics have been verified by independent experts. And you just confessed, on camera, to coming into significant money at the exact time of the theft. Derek's facade crumbled. His face went from pale to red. Sweat beading on his forehead. I was going to pay it back. I was borrowing it. I had business debts. I was desperate. I was going to return every penny before anyone noticed. The room erupted. Patricia started sobbing. Richard stood up, his chair scraping loudly. You stole from your sister. You stole from your grandmother's legacy. Derek tried to approach him. Dad, let me explain. I had creditors threatening me. I was going to lose everything. I just needed time to make the investments pay off, and then I'd return it all. Brenda was pulling at Derek's arm. We need to go. We need to call our lawyer. But Brenda's panic revealed more than she intended. My mother turned on her. You knew he stole the money. Brenda's tears turned defensive. He told me it was a loan from you and Dad. He said you'd given him money to save his business, and we just couldn't tell anyone because it would look like favoritism. I didn't know it was Natalie's trust fund. But the timeline didn't support her claim. She'd been there for all of it, had helped gaslight me, had recorded that video to make me look unstable. She was complicit, and everyone in the room knew it. Richard's voice, when he finally spoke, was cold and final. Get out of this house. Both of you, get out now. Derek tried to defend himself, to minimize, to explain. I'm still your son. This was a mistake, a desperate mistake, but it doesn't change that I'm family. My father walked toward him, and had never seen Richard look so angry. You're a thief and a liar. You stole from your sister. You manipulated your mother and me. You tried to destroy Natalie's reputation to cover your crime. You are not the son I raised. Get out. Derek and Brenda left, rushing out the door like criminals fleeing a crime scene. The silence they left behind was deafening. Patricia couldn't stop crying. Rachel brought her tissues. Richard stood by the window, his hands shaking. I sat there, feeling oddly empty. I'd won. The truth was out. My family had seen the evidence, heard the confession, but instead of triumph, I felt exhausted. Patricia came to me first, dropping to her knees beside my chair. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have listened. Her tears soaked into my shirt as she clung to me. I held her, this woman who'd raised me, who'd failed to protect me when I needed her most. Richard stood apart, his jaw working, unable to form words. The guilt on his face was almost too much to witness. Over the next hour, we sat in Rachel's living room and went through everything. Sarah laid out the legal options. We could file criminal charges for fraud and identity theft. Derek could face jail time. Or we could pursue civil litigation, forcing him to return the money and pay damages without involving criminal prosecution. I chose the civil route. Not because I felt merciful, but because I knew criminal charges would destroy my parents. They'd already lost their son to his crimes. I wouldn't make them visit him in prison. Sarah filed an emergency motion to freeze Derek's assets while the case proceeded. Within days, Derek was forced to liquidate. The BMW was repossessed. The house went up for sale, though they were underwater on it now after the money they'd spent on renovations. Expensive furniture, jewelry, all of it sold to pay back the debt. Derek filed for bankruptcy again, but the judge ruled that debts from fraud couldn't be discharged. He would owe me no matter what. The process took 6 months. 6 months of court dates, depositions, financial disclosures. Derek's attorney tried to negotiate a payment plan, but Sarah pushed hard. She wanted full recovery, plus legal fees and damages for the emotional distress and reputational harm. We settled eventually for $180,000, the amount we could actually extract from Derek's liquidated assets. It wasn't the full $250,000, but after legal fees and the cost of the investigation, it was something. More importantly, it was justice. Derek was financially ruined, his credit destroyed, his reputation in tatters. The extended family fractured. Aunt Joyce made excuses and slipped away from the dinner that night, too uncomfortable to face her complicity in believing Derek's lies. She never apologized. Uncle Ron called to say he was sorry for doubting me, but the relationship was strained. Cousin Beth sent a card, but kept her distance. The family gatherings stopped happening. Holidays became small, awkward affairs. Derek and Brenda divorced within a year. The stress of the scandal, the financial collapse, the mutual blame, it destroyed their marriage. Last I heard, Derek was working at a car rental company, living in a studio apartment, paying monthly restitution as ordered by the court. He sent one email of apology, written by his lawyer, carefully worded to avoid admitting more liability. I never responded. My relationship with my parents slowly, painfully rebuilt. We started having weekly dinners, just the three of us. Patricia would sometimes start crying in the middle of a meal, apologizing again. Richard was quieter, the guilt weighing on him. Head failed to protect his daughter, had believed the wrong child, and that knowledge aged him. We learned to talk again, but there was a scar there, a permanent reminder of what had happened. Some wounds heal but never disappear. Rachel became more than a cousin. She was like a sister, someone who'd stood by me when it mattered. Marcus remained a good friend, checking in regularly, still joking about his detective skills. My boss Linda gave me a promotion, impressed by my resilience through the whole ordeal. She said anyone who could handle that kind of personal crisis while still doing good work deserved recognition. I used the recovered money wisely. Paid off my student loans completely, put a down payment on a small house in a quiet neighborhood, started a savings account for the first time in my life, building the financial security my grandmother had wanted for me. The rest I invested carefully, determined to honor her legacy by making smart choices. 6 months after the case settled, I visited her grave. I hadn't been there since the funeral 3 years ago. I told her everything that had happened, about Derek's betrayal, about the fight for justice, about finally getting back some of what was stolen. I like to think she would have been proud of me for not giving up. The money wasn't just money to me. It represented her years of work, her sacrifices, her love for me. Derek had stolen more than cash. Head tried to steal her legacy and my dignity. But Id fought back, and in the end, truth had won. Not easily, not completely, but enough. Today, as I sit on the front porch of the house I bought with the recovered money, watching the sunrise paint my quiet street in shades of orange and gold, I think about what the past year and a half has taught me. The journey from that terrible family dinner to this peaceful morning was the hardest thing I've ever done. My relationship with my parents continued to heal, layer by layer, conversation by conversation. We have dinner together every Sunday now, a ritual we're all committed to maintaining. But it's different. There's a carefulness to our interactions, an awareness that we broke something fundamental and we're all working to repair it. My mother still tears up sometimes, mid-conversation about nothing in particular, and I know she's thinking about how she failed me. My father has become more demonstrative with affection, as if he's trying to make up for the months he spent doubting me. He hugs me longer now, says he loves me more often, calls me in the middle of the week just to check in. I can see the guilt still eating at him, the knowledge that he chose to believe Derek's lies over my truth. I've told them both, many times, that I forgive them. And I do forgive them, intellectually. But, emotionally, there's a barrier now that wasn't there before. A small part of me that holds back, that can't fully trust that they'll choose me next time a crisis comes. Maybe that barrier will dissolve eventually. Or maybe it's permanent. Either way, we're learning to build around it. Derek sent a longer apology letter about a year ago, not written by his attorney this time, but in his own words. He claimed Head been in therapy, that he understood how much damage Head caused, that he was consumed by shame and regret. The letter asked not for forgiveness but for acknowledgement that he was trying to become a better person. I read it 3 times and then filed it away. I neither forgave him nor condemned him. He was simply someone who'd once been my brother and was now a stranger who owed me money. His monthly restitution payments arrive like clockwork, electronic transfers that I barely notice anymore. Some family members reached out to apologize for their role in doubting me. These apologies ranged from genuine and heartfelt to perfunctory and uncomfortable. I accepted them all with grace, but I also noticed who never called, who never acknowledged their complicity in the gaslighting and isolation he'd experienced. Those relationships are likely beyond repair, and I've made peace with that. You learn who people really are when you're at your most vulnerable. Some pass the test, others fail spectacularly. The knowledge is both painful and valuable. Rachel and I are closer than ever. She's planning to move closer to my area for a new job, and we've already talked about becoming the kind of family for each other that we needed during the crisis. Marcus visits twice a year, and we always joke about starting a private investigation firm together. My work as a social worker took on new meaning after everything I went through. I understand now, in a visceral way, what it feels like when systems fail you, when the people who should protect you instead harm you. I bring that understanding to my clients, especially those dealing with family dysfunction and financial exploitation. I've become an advocate for elder abuse prevention, speaking at community centers about protecting vulnerable adults from financial fraud by family members. The money I recovered wasn't the full amount, but it was enough to change my life. My house is small, but it's mine. Every mortgage payment is a reminder that I fought for this, that I earned this security through determination and refusing to accept defeat. I have a garden now, something I never had space for in my apartment. I grow tomatoes and herbs and flowers that my grandmother loved. Sometimes I talk to her while I'm weeding, updating her on my life, thanking her for the gift she gave me and for the fighting spirit I didn't know I had until I needed it. The lessons from this experience are complex. I learned that truth doesn't always prevail easily. Sometimes you have to fight for it, scratch and claw and refuse to surrender even when everyone tells you you're wrong. I learned that family can inflict the deepest wounds because they know exactly where to cut. But I also learned that chosen family, people like Rachel and Marcus and Sarah who stood by me, can be just as powerful as blood relations. Maybe more so, because they choose you without obligation. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. At my lowest point, when I was drafting that apology email for crimes I didn't commit, I could have surrendered. Part of me wanted to. But Rachel's phone call reminded me that giving up would mean letting Derek rewrite reality, letting him turn me into the villain of a story where I was actually the victim. I learned to trust myself even when everyone else doubted. That's perhaps the most important lesson. When the whole world is telling you you're wrong, when even your own parents look at you with suspicion, you have to have an unshakable core of self-trust. You have to know who you are and what you did or didn't do. That kind of certainty is both lonely and liberating. I'm not bitter, though people sometimes expect me to be. Bitterness would mean Derek still had power over me, still occupied space in my thoughts and emotions. Instead, I'm careful. I'm more guarded about trust. I verify things that I used to take on faith. I keep better records, maintain better boundaries, protect myself in ways I never thought I'd need to with family. Some people might see that as sad, this loss of innocence and easy trust. But I see it as wisdom earned through experience. I survived a betrayal that could have broken me. I came out the other side, not unscathed, but functional. Damaged, but not destroyed. And somehow, that feels like enough. My grandmother used to tell me that character is revealed in crisis. She'd say that easy times tell you nothing about who someone really is, but hardship shows their true nature. Derek's crisis revealed that he was willing to steal, manipulate, and destroy to save himself. My crisis revealed that I was willing to fight, to stand alone if necessary, and to demand justice, even when it came at a tremendous personal cost. I think about what I would tell someone else going through something similar. I'd tell them that the fight is worth it, even when it feels impossible. I'd tell them to document everything, to find allies wherever they can, to trust their gut when something feels wrong. I'd tell them that legal battles are expensive and exhausting, but sometimes they're necessary. And I'd tell them that even if they can't recover everything that was stolen, recovering their truth and their dignity is its own kind of victory. As I finish my coffee and watch my neighbors start their day, I feel something close to contentment. Not happiness, not yet. The wounds are too fresh for that. But contentment, a sense that, in building a life worth living, a life that my grandmother would be proud of. A life that proves Derek didn't win, not really. He got away with some of the money, but he lost his family, his reputation, his integrity. I lost some money and some illusions about family, but I kept my soul, and as the morning sun climbs higher, warming my face, I realize that I'm not waiting for some future moment when it'll finally be okay. I'm okay now. Not perfect, not unmarked by what happened, but fundamentally okay. I survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, and am still here. Still fighting, still growing, still becoming someone stronger and wiser than I was before. Sometimes that's all healing is. Not forgetting, not even fully forgiving. Just continuing. Just waking up each morning and choosing to engage with life despite the scars. Just trusting that each day builds on the last until you look back and realize you've built something beautiful from the wreckage. So here I am, 29 years old now, sitting on my own porch, drinking coffee I can afford, in a house I earned through the hardest fight of my life. I'm not the naive young woman who walked into that family dinner expecting nothing more than pot roast and small talk. I'm someone who knows that the people closest to you can become strangers in an instant. Someone who understands that justice is possible but never easy. Someone who learned to be her own fierce advocate when no one else would stand up for her. And you know what? I kind of like who I've become. Not despite what happened, but partially because of it. That's not gratitude for the betrayal. It's acknowledgement that I chose how to respond to it, and my choices shaped me into someone resilient and aware. Derek may have stolen my grandmother's money, but he couldn't steal the most important thing she gave me, her strength, her belief that I could build a good life through hard work and integrity. That legacy lives on, not in a bank account, but in who I am every single day. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to fight for the truth when everyone doubted you? Have you experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to keep going? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about resilience, justice, and the complicated truth about family. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in fighting impossible battles. Thank you for being here, for listening to my story, for being part of a community that believes truth matters even when it's hard to prove. Wishing you the courage to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to know who deserves your trust, and the peace that comes from knowing you fought for what was right. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.